welcome to your 11.1, your first flipped notes session. Thanks so much for logging on. Tomorrow we're going to do a bunch of activities with this, so make sure you fill out your guided notes as you go along, and make sure you have any questions ready for me tomorrow or any things that you weren't sure about after watching the video. So we're going to find square roots today. We're going to talk about squares, and you're going to identify the perfect squares. So let's first figure out what this means. So if I have x to the second power, or x squared, you should know that it is just that times itself. So this would mean x times x. So if we have a number squared, so 20 squared, it would just mean 20 times 20. Okay, same thing here. 26 squared would just mean 26 times 26. Simple as that. So a lot of times they do 26 times 2, and that is very incorrect. So it's the number times itself. That's what squared means. So if we're squaring all of these different things, there's certain ones that you're going to need to remember. And these are your perfect squares that we're going to be talking about today. So perfect squares are what we're putting in these boxes. So we're going to go along with them together. If you don't need me to list them for you, you can go ahead and fill it out on your own. So 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 7 times 7 is 49, 8 times 8 is 64, 9 times 9 is 81, 10 times 10 is 100. Here's where it gets a little tricky. These are harder to remember. 11 times 11 is 121, 12 times 12 is 144, 13 times 13, 169. I always remember these two because it's like they're flip-flopped. And then 15 times 15 is 225. So those are the numbers. These in this column right here, all of these second columns, these are your perfect squares, and these are what you're going to need to remember because we're going to use them throughout the entire unit. So make sure tomorrow you have a good understanding of those perfect squares. So let's put them to use and switch over to square roots. Now, radical is just a fancy way of saying square roots. So if I say radical, you know I'm just talking about square roots. So square roots are the exact opposite of squaring something, which is what we were doing above. So doing x squared, the opposite of that would be finding the square root. So that's an important symbol to remember. Hopefully you can identify where that is on your calculator because you're going to be using it a lot. So the square root of a perfect square, so if we square root these numbers that we circled up here, it's going to be a whole number. So not a decimal. It's going to be a whole number. So let's look down here. These are square roots. It's kind of going backwards from what we were doing up there. If I do square root of 27, if I type that into my calculator, it's going to give me something like 5.1 something. So is that a perfect square? Well, it's not on our list, so that's why it doesn't work out nice. So 27 is not a perfect square, not perfect, which is fine. It's just not what we're looking for. Not perfect was what I meant to write because it comes out as a decimal. Square root of 1, well, is 1 a perfect square? If you look back at your list, yes it is. So the square root of 1 would just be 1. Square root of 4, if we look at our list, is 4 a perfect square? Well, yes it is. So that means the square root of 4 is going to be 2. Because 2 times 2 gives us 4. What about 121? Well, 121 is also on our list, so the square root of 121 is 11. Because 11 times 11 is 121. Now this is where things get a little out of hand. See this little guy right here? You can't have a negative underneath a square root symbol. So there is no answer to that problem because you can't have a negative on the inside. This one, the negative's on the outside. That's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do square root of 81. Well, 81 is a perfect square. Square root of 81 is 9. And since that negative is on the outside, we're going to leave that on the outside. So if you're watching this video, I want you to come to class tomorrow with your guided notes, and I want you to think about how we would solve a problem like this. Okay, so we're going to step it up a little bit in class tomorrow. So well done watching the first video. Come to class with any questions, and I will see you tomorrow.